Hello everyone, and welcome to another Ren'py tutorial. I've got a really cool one planned this time. Something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I've just been too lazy to figure it out. But I'm going to show you how to implement a simple inventory system from scratch in Ren'py. So I've seen a few different tutorials on this, and the ones that I found are either needlessly complex or a little bit too simple for what I like. So I thought I'd try to come up with an idea that's kind of right in the middle. Not too complex, but also not too simple. So we're going to design an inventory system that is relatively simple, but is also extensible, so we can add features to it later on. This is most likely going to be the first part in a series. Not entirely sure where this one's going to end up, but like I said, I'm going to kind of leave the door open so we can add more features later on. I do have an idea or two, but like I said, we're just going to keep it relatively simple for right now. So if you're new here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave me a comment below if you have any ideas for where to take this inventory system. And with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So before we get to actual coding, there will be a couple of pieces of requisite knowledge that you should have. You should be somewhat familiar with Python programming, and you should also know a little bit about OOP, or object-oriented programming. Thankfully, I've done videos on each of these topics, so if you need a little bit of refresher on that, be sure to check my links above. I'll put those on the screen for you. And you should also know a little bit about string formatting. So one cool thing is that in this one, we're going to be using a new feature or two that is in Ren'py version 8. So version 8 came out a few months ago, and the main difference between version 7 and version 8 is that version 8 is built on top of Python 3, whereas version 7 and before were built on Python 2. So there's one new feature in particular that's going to make our lives a whole lot easier, and I can't wait to get to that, but it has to do with string formatting. Alright, so with that, let's go ahead and get into our code. So I've got my YouTube tutorial scene that we've been working with in our previous tutorials. I've already got that open. I've deleted everything from the script except for just the scene and our character. So really simple. And I'm going to go ahead and put the code for our inventory system just at the top of this script. I normally would put this in a completely separate file, but just to keep things simple for right now, I'm just going to put it all in the same script. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an init Python block. So what this does, if you don't remember, is that init means that it's going to run at initialization. So whenever Ren'py loads in, it's going to load all the init statements before it does anything else. And since this is a Python statement, that means that anything in this block is going to be pure Python code. So our regular Ren'py statements aren't going to work in this. So we're going to have to use some statement equivalents, which I have also covered before. So be sure to check that out. Statement equivalents are just how to use our regular Ren'py statements in pure Python. And I'll get to that when it comes up. All right, the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need two classes. So our first class is going to be for our actual inventory. So we're going to create an inventory class, and we'll go ahead and get our constructor created. Remember, we need to pass in self as an argument, and the other arguments that you pass into your constructor are going to be determined by what exactly you want to do with your inventory. For right now, all I want to do is keep track of what is in our inventory and how many items total exist in inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and just say items. That's going to be a list that contains the items that are in our inventory. And then I'm going to create another argument called number of items, which is going to be the number of items in our inventory. Then we have to do, let's see, self.items equals items. Remember, this is just some boilerplate that we have to do for any class that we create. Number of items equals number of items, and that is it for the constructor. Pretty simple so far. But like I said, we're going to make this extensible, so there's a lot of different places we could go with this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is for right now. We're going to go put some methods in that a little bit later, but for now, I want to go ahead and create our inventory item class. So class inventory item. So this is just going to be the individual items that we can put into our inventory. And again, there are lots of different directions that we could go with this. But for now, we'll put in the self keyword. All I really want to know is the name of the item, and then we're going to give a description of the item. And that's all we really need. So self.name equals name, and self.description equals description. One thing that I also want to point out is that I am no longer using my beloved Atom, ATOM, text editor, but instead I'm using Visual Studio Code. That was another thing that they introduced in Python 8. I'm going to do a video soon about the differences between Python 7 and Python 8, some of the important new things that they've added to it. But one of the things is Visual Studio Code support, which I prefer Visual Studio Code to Atom. I use it whenever I'm programming in pure Python or whenever I'm doing anything in JavaScript, HTML, CSS, any website stuff, and now I use it for Python, for Ren'py as well. But again, I'll cover that in the future. Alright, so that's all we need for our inventory items, and I believe that's all we need for that entirely. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a couple of methods to our class. And remember, a method is just a function that acts upon our class. So methods just do things. So what do we want our inventory to be able to do, or what do we want to be able to do with it? So right now, all I really want is to be able to add an item to the inventory. I want to be able to remove an item from inventory, and I want to be able to create an output list of all of our inventory items that we currently have. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function for add item, and we're going to pass in the item to add as an argument. We're just going to pass for right now. I'll go put in the code later. We're also going to do remove item, and we need to pass in as an argument the item to be removed. Oh, and I also need, I actually forgot this when I was testing this earlier, we need the self argument that is required of every method to pass in self as an argument, so we know that we're referring to this particular instance of the inventory class. And then I'm going to do list items, and for that one I think I just need self. That's all I really need for that. I don't need to pass any other arguments into it. Alright, so whenever we add an item, what we need to do is we need to actually add the item to our inventory, which is going to be our items right there. So that's a list that's going to keep track of every individual item in the inventory. And we also need to increment the number of items by 1. So the way that we're going to do that is, first of all, we're going to say self.items. Oops. So this is referring to our items attribute. And then we're going to say dot append, and then whatever item that we passed in as an argument. Self.items.append item. And then we're going to increment number of items. So we're going to say self.number of items plus equals 1. And so that's going to increment that by 1. And then when we remove an item, we just need to do all of that, but in reverse. So we're going to do self.items.remove item instead of append. So again, if you might need to brush up on your list methods if any of this is a little bit confusing. But append just means to add an item to the end of a list, and then remove means to remove that item from a list. Then we're going to say self.number of items minus equals 1. So that will decrement the number of items whenever we remove one. Alright, and then I want to be able to list the items. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have our main character, describe all of the items that she is currently carrying. So we're going to have to use a couple of say statements in here. So the first thing we're going to do is check to see if there's anything in the inventory. And if there isn't, then our character is going to say, I'm not carrying anything. So we'll do that first. We'll say if self.items, actually, let's say length of self.items, if that is less than 1, then we are going to say, so here's where we're going to use a statement equivalent. So I'm going to go back down here to my main script. We're going to show Lana neutral at left. So normally, actually let's do, I'm going to change that to Luna. There we go. All right, normally what we would do is we would say, just type in luna.c and say, I'm not carrying anything. There we go. So again, like I said before, this is a Ren'py statement, and Python is not going to know what to do with this. Like we're putting it in a Python block, so we have to use pure Python. So instead, we have to use a statement equivalent. We have to put it in terms that Python will understand. So the way that we do that is we're going to type in the name, just like before, luna.c, and then in parentheses, we're going to put in our statement. I'm not carrying anything. And we'll go ahead and put in an else block, and then pass it. There we go. Now let's go ahead and test this so far, and I'll see how this works. So the way that we are, actually first I need to actually create an inventory object. So let's go ahead and do that. Inventory equals inventory. So here's just where we're creating an instance of this inventory class. So again, to recap on our OOP stuff, this is just a template by which we can create objects. You can really have as many inventories as you want. So you could create a different inventory for every single character in the game if you wanted to. But in that, the self argument happens automatically, but we have to tell it a list of items to include and then the number of items total. So right now, we're going to start with nothing. So I'm just going to pass in an empty list by putting in brackets, and then I'm going to put in a 0 for the number of items. There we go. And then we're going to call a method on that inventory class or that inventory object. We're going to say inventory dot, and then what did I put? What did I call that? List items. And since this technically is a function, we have to end it with empty parentheses. Normally we would put any parameters, arguments in there, but we don't have any, so we don't have to put anything in. Now let us check that real quick and see what happens. Oops. Let us see what I did wrong. Oh, so this is also a Python statement, so I've got to precede that with a $sign. And up here, I have to say default inventory. There we go. So I'm declaring this with a Ren'py statement, but when I call that function, I have to use a Python statement. And another way to call a Python statement instead of doing the Python block is you can just put a $sign at the beginning of a line, and it will just treat that one line as a Python statement. Now let's give that a try. There we go. We did not crash and burn this time. So let's go to start. And yeah, she says, I'm not carrying anything. And I just realized that I called in an empty sprite, so I'm going to go ahead and change this back to Lana, where it was before. There we go. And let's check that one more time. Excellent. There we go. There we go. We're good. So when I called that method, it basically ran this bit of code that said if the length of our items list is less than 1, which it is, it's at 0, then we run this bit of code. She says, I'm not carrying anything. So now we're going to create the else. So if it is not less than 1, meaning if it's 1 or above, then we're going to do this. So we're going to go ahead and put in a bit of text that says, I am currently carrying. And this is where the fun part comes in. So again, if you need to brush up on your Python, go back and check out my earlier lessons on that. But we're going to use a for loop. We're going to say for item in self dot items. So we're going to run through all of these as in sequence. And we are going to have her say, oh, she already did, I am currently carrying. Let's see. So here's where we're going to use our f strings. And this is a feature that was added in Python 3. So by putting f immediately preceding a string, you can put variables right in the string. Now we can already do that in Ren'py by using brackets, square brackets in our dialog statements. But in this, we have to use the f, and we have to use curly brackets whenever we're working in pure Python. So she is going to say item.name, and then item.description. There we go. So for every single item that's in our inventory list, she's going to say the name of the item and then the description of the item. The problem right now is we don't have any items. So let us go and create some items. We'll do that right under our inventory. So we'll say, we're going to do this as defined. Generally, you should use the default keyword for something that can change, and then the define keyword for something that does not change. If you remember when we were creating our character objects, we used define. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the inventory items. We're going to assume that they can't change. And as I've said before, you can create as many instances of a class as you want. So that's what we're going to do right now. We are going to instantiate or create different instances of this inventory item class. Every one of them is going to behave just like this, but we can put a different name and description in each one of them if we want to. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to say define inventory item. Oops, and oh wait, no, I'm doing that right. Actually, no, I take that back. Sorry about that. When I define it, I'm giving it the name of the variable. So I'm going to call this door key. There we go. Then here's where we instantiate. And we're going to call that inventory item. And then we have to pass in a name and a description. This is how we want it to appear on the screen. So we're going to say door key and try using it in a door. And let's do another couple real quick. Let's say define chest key, like maybe for a treasure chest, equals inventory item chest key, and try using it in a chest. And let's do one more thing. Define stack of money. Inventory item. You can use this to buy things. There we go. So right now, if I run this, nothing really is going to change. Our script's going to look exactly like it was before because we still don't have anything in our inventory when we list items. So we have to add things to our inventory. And how do we do that? Well, we created an add item method for our inventory class, so we can use that to add an item. So let's say inventory dot add item, and we will add a door key. And let's also do, oh, and I forgot these have to be pure Python, so we have to put our $ there. And then let's do inventory dot add item chest key. So if we say, and we put in some dialogue, let's say, let's see what I'm carrying. And then we'll go ahead and put inventory.list items. So when she calls this one, she's not going to be carrying anything. Then we'll say, I'm going to pick up these keys. There we go. All right, and let's run that and see what we get. All right, let's see what I'm carrying. So she's not carrying anything. And then I'm going to pick up these keys. Now let's see what I'm carrying. I'm currently carrying door key. Try using it in a door. And chest key. Try using it in a chest. There we go. And just to show you how the rest of this works, let's say we want to, and I'm going to go ahead and put these in a, in a Python block just to keep it a little bit cleaner, so we don't have to keep putting $signs. So let's say after we list items, let's do, or let's say, what if I put down the door key. So let's say inventory dot remove item. And pick up this stack of money. And this is going to prove that we can set items down and pick items up by, or remove them and adding them from into our inventory. Let's see what I'm carrying. So carrying nothing. I'm going to pick up these keys. Now I am carrying a door key and a chest key. What if I put down the door key and pick up this stack of money? Oh, and I forgot to hit list items again. There we go. Now let's give that a try. That should work. Let me just reload that. Yeah, Shift R, if you don't remember, is the hotkey for reload. That really comes in handy to save some time. Let's see what I'm carrying. I'm not carrying anything. Pick up these keys. Door key, chest key. Now I'm going to put down the door key, pick up the stack of money. I am currently carrying just the chest key and a stack of money. There we go. So again, a really simple way that we can create an inventory system that is reusable. So we have these really simple methods right here: add item, remove item, and then list items. So we don't have to put out this bunch of code every time we want to do one of those things. We just put in one simple line and it does it for us automatically. So as I said before, this is extensible. So what else could we do with this? Well, one of the easiest things that we could do is, I'm not going to do this now, but I'm going to leave this to you to experiment with. But let's say that you wanted to only have your character be able to carry a certain weight or a certain number of items. Then you could create a weight attribute for every inventory item that you pick up. And whenever you add an item, check the weight and see, maybe add a maximum weight value to your inventory. And then if you exceed that weight, it won't let you pick up any more items. Or if you pick up too many items, like if you can only pick up 10 items at a time, keep track of that with number of items. And then if you pick up too many items, then it won't let you pick up the 11th item if you set 10 as a limit. So lots of cool things you can do. One thing that I'm currently experimenting with is doing a graphical interface for a menu that we can also make extensible. So hopefully I'll be doing that pretty soon. But in the meantime, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave me a comment below if you have any questions about this, or if there's anything else that you would like to see from an inventory system, and I'll see if I can do a video on that in the near future. And until then, have fun, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.